Hi, everyone, and thank you for that introduction. So I just wanted to give you a quick look at what life was like for me when I was a teenager. So when I was a teenager, it was back in the 90s. And this is what most teenagers my age looked like who were girls. And when I was a teenager, I didn't let anyone take any pictures of me. So all I have to show you is what my bedroom looked like, and it was like this. So clearly, there were some different tastes in music and dress to other girls, but actually we were part of that same demographic. We were young girls, we were young women, and we were growing up in the world trying to figure ourselves out. As girls, we had the same issues with self-esteem, being liked. We were figuring out our beauty, and we were just working out our place in the world. We had the same advertisers trying to sell to us, so it was clothing or food or makeup or tampons, and some of it was really, really odd. I'm not sure if anyone remembers this flake ad, but it confused the hell out of me. What was it about? Was it about sex? Was it chocolate? Was it meant to be bath time? I mean, I was 12 and it freaked me out so much. I didn't have one of those things in my ice cream for another 10 years. And at the same time, we had magazines who were putting out these identical agendas of what beauty should be. You know, we were stuck between traditional roles for women. So mum was in the kitchen at dinner time. But at the same time, there was this high glamour, there was this aspiration, this unattainable idea of beauty. And for those of you who remember or grew up in the 90s, it was the time of the supers. So we had Naomi Campbell, we had Linda Evangelista, we had Christy Turlington. And the messaging absolutely was aspiration, it was high glamour. And for a 15-year-old in Dartford, it definitely wasn't attainable, and certainly not for most women. And so there was this dream, you know, the dream was for women to have it all, to be high achievers, power players, be whatever we wanted to be. But we didn't have anywhere near the right role models, and the world hadn't actually changed to meet this vision that was being sold to us. There was no Beyonce, there was no Emma Watson. Yes, we had a female British Prime Minister, but I mean, let's face it, she played a man's game. We didn't have a Hillary. We had Hillary's husband, so, you know, won't say more about that. And toward the end of the 90s, there were signs that this was changing. So what I did was I dug up an old copy of Campaign, so from about 1996, and it just said that, you know, women were fed up. They were sick of being sold this aspirational nonsense around everyday products, and that, you know, the advertising around shampoo and deodorant, so anyone who remembers Soft and Gentle, it just wasn't hitting the mark. But then the flip side of that was that everything was then turned into this like life-altering, empowering life event. And it just wasn't very authentic. And I challenge any of you to not sing along towards the end of this advert, but this video is a case in point.
But boy, is it gonna get hotter!
New Invisible Ultra from Bodyform has ultra soft sides so you don't feel it. It's ultra thin so you don't see it. And because it's ultra reliable, you can do whatever you want.
Now, I don't know what it's like for some women on their period, but about 98% of us, we're not going to be scaling a water tower and soaring off the roof of our cars. And this isn't something that's a new development. Like, this is what it's been like for the first woman who ever had her first period. But when I look at advertising from that era compared to now, there's been a crucial shift in placing women at the heart of campaigns rather than products. So tapping into the hopes, the dreams, the realities for women. And it's so much more powerful than using fear or insecurity as a motivator. To me, that time when you're making your first steps as a woman, when you're figuring things out, it's such a key time for advertisers. If you get us young and you show us that you're on our side, you'll pretty much have our loyalty for life, I would say. And it's that time where if you invest in the right people, if you pull opinion from a diverse range of talent, and when I use that word diversity, I don't just mean women, I mean people from different backgrounds, different races, different religions, you can actually create a campaign that can make a difference and really, really cement brand loyalty. Because here's the terrible truth, you know, girls, this is before they become teenagers, they have an abundance of confidence. Like anyone who has kids of that age, you know, between, I would say 6 to 10, you know, they think that they can rule the world. But according to various studies, after the age of 10, and it's a very specific age, that confidence just steadily drops away. They learn fear. They see this narrow box that the world has in store for them. And advertising plays such a significant role in that, you know, for better or for worse. There's a very important statistic that shows that 60 seconds into seeing an ad for women, if you see an ad and there's an underweight model that's used in that ad, that negatively impacts how you see yourself, how you see your own attractiveness. And conversely, on the flip side of that, research from 2015 shows that brands that resonate really, really highly with girls are ones that listen to their opinion, makes them feel confident, and allows them to be themselves. So they're not telling them how to be or what to do. And I think for me, Belinda Palmer from Lady Geek, she sums this up really well. She says, successful brands that engage young women deliver on three things. One is emotion, so, you know, make me feel something. The second is reassurance, so make me trust you. And the third is authenticity, show me that you mean it. And that last one is incredibly important because you can't just like wallpaper over female empowerment and expect people to buy it or to get it. And there are some brands that really get this. You know, we're very lucky that we're in an era where there are some brands that are nailing it. So Dove's My Beauty, My Say campaign, that was a superb campaign. And one of my favorite brands is Nike. And Nike have done some incredible things in the space around women and how they advertise to them. And one of the campaigns that they ran last year was called Better For It. And the whole point of this was to bring together this community of women around the world. It was a very ambitious campaign, but it paid off. And it was also to inspire women to take up exercise and to identify with their brand and obviously buy their stuff. But in this year, ahead of the 2016 Olympics, they ran in India a campaign that was championing female athletes. And, you know, again, it sort of inspired a lot of women who thought that, oh, okay, I can't do this because I'm a woman. And actually, hey, there are these women who are doing it. And this year, they've got a campaign called Unlimited. And to me, it just sums up why they're leaders when it comes to this, you know, really subtle yet strong messaging, a strong way of how they push advertising to women. So I'd just like to show you a little clip.
It wasn't until I was about 47, 48 that I was introduced to running. Well, actually by a priest. I'm Sister Madonna Buter, known as the Iron Nun. There was a point where I did not want to see a pair of running shoes. Then triathlon came in. That was the salvation. There are a lot of times when I had to think about failures and not reaching the goal that I may have set for myself. Then I realized the only failure is not to try. Because your effort in itself is a success.
So we're entering a different age of advertising when it comes to women. And the Huffington Post have done some great work with clients such as Dove, Bodyform, Triumph that tap into our strong female messaging. But unfortunately, there are some brands that still don't get it right. So this year, we had the delight that was the Sprite advert. Now, she's seen more ceilings than Michelangelo. That, to me, I haven't shown a single person this who went, wow, that's really clever, that's a really great idea. There's always been this sharp intake of breath of, oh my God, you know, who the hell came up with this? And I want to know that. Who came up with this? Who signed it off? And what the hell has it got to do with lemonade? And the second one is gap. So this, again, this is from 2016. This isn't, we're not talking about 10 years ago when people didn't know that you can't push messaging around pink is for girls, blue is for boys. But that's what they've done this year. And this idea that, boys can be clever, they can be scholars, they can do whatever they want. And hey, girls, by the way, you can wear pink and look pretty. And it caused a huge problem for Gap. Because the fact is today's generation of girls and women, they're far savvier, far smarter about gender roles than my generation of women ever were. And social media has a huge, huge part to play in this. Admittedly, there are ongoing conversations around how social media is eroding self-esteem in women, or particularly young girls or teenagers. But actually, it's also being used to harness body positive movements, those conversations around female empowerment. And a quick story I wanted to tell you just to illustrate that, because it actually shows both sides of the stories, that there was a software company, sorry, not was, there is a software company called OneLogin, which is based in the US, and they ran an advertising campaign to recruit more engineers. And the person that they used for this was a very attractive woman. And there was this whole sexist backlash about the whole thing, People were saying, she doesn't look like an engineer, she's way too fit, there's no way that she could actually do it. And actually, she was an engineer. She was actually one of OneLogin's engineers, and she understandably was very miffed by this. And so she wrote about the fact that she was really miffed about this. And this got picked up around the world. So you had hundreds upon hundreds of women who took selfies of themselves and posted it on social media with the hashtag I look like an engineer. And so something that was maybe a story in the US just went global. And off the back of that, after that story, there was a 45% increase in searches around girls who code. So the really good thing, despite all the sexism around it, is that because young girls and women read this story, it opened up this industry of STEM to them, like an industry that's so traditionally male. And they were like, oh my God, there are all these women, and engineering. The whole point of this whole thing was to show that engineering, or any job actually, it doesn't have a gender, it doesn't have a look, it doesn't have a particular haircut. You can do whatever you want. And so that's a really empowering story about how you can change conversations. And social media also means that there's no place to hide for advertisers. So if your ideas are lazy or outdated, people are going to know now in a matter of hours. So something that was maybe, I don't know, like a news and brief or a side story in Campaign or PR Weekly, it's global news. That Gap advert is a case in point. There was a huge outcry on social media, and that was a UK campaign, and they were talking about it around the world. And Gap obviously is a global brand, right? Protein World. There isn't a single person in this room, hopefully, that doesn't know about the Protein World uproar. And a result of that is that the London mayor banned sexist advertising on the tube. And 1.3 billion people use the tube every year, so advertisers have to get on board with this. 2016, we just can't have pink is for girls, blue is for boys. Boys can be whatever they want. They can be adventurers, they can be scholars, and girls are just there to be looked at. That concept died a long time ago. Mums and daughters can't just be the default setup in the kitchen, because that's not what our lives are like. Like all of you who are parents or not parents, you don't necessarily just rely on the woman in your life to do the cooking, right? And of course, the advancement and the liberation of women, it's not just going to be won by an empowering campaign or an empowering ad. Men are such an intrinsic part of this conversation. There's a huge conversation ongoing about how we depict men and depicting them in non-stereotypical scenarios. And that's really, really important because it widens the definition of masculinity, and you can't have a conversation about one gender without the other. Now, choosing to ditch stereotypes can seem really scary. You're trying to appeal to a wide range of demographics. You don't really want to alienate anyone by pushing the envelope too much. But trust me, the payoff is huge for those who dare to be different. For example, when the 2010 Kia Soul commercial featured professional golfer Michelle Wie, She was beating the men at their own game at the golf club. Their monthly sales rose by 44% in a year. That's 44%. That is huge. So to be frank, you can't afford to be stagnant any longer. Women account for 85% of consumer purchase power in the US. In the UK, according to Cara, 57% of them make the key buying decisions in the household. And in an industry like cars, for example, so heavily skewed towards men, women make 70% of women have purchase power, or they heavily influence the decision to buy a car. So what works? It doesn't always have to be about empowerment. It doesn't always have to send a clever message like the Like a Girl campaign. The single most fundamental basic, and this is true whether you're marketing to men, women, is to be able to take them on a journey, to reach them through emotion. Going back to what Belinda Palmer said, make me trust you, make me believe what you have to say, and you can only do that through authenticity and being honest. Because authenticity, it's one of the unifying things that will make one of our stories on the Huffington Post do very well, or resonate, or fly on social media. It's a leveler no matter your race, your gender, your religion. And we live in such an age of transparency, such hyper-connectedness. People will know when you're not being authentic. So keep an eye on the trends, jump on them as quickly as you can. Digital moves at the speed of light. We don't have the lead times that print, once afforded you. And an amazing brand that's doing something great in this space is Amazon Fashion. So they first launched with their Wish I Could Wear campaign. And this was championing women of all shapes, all sizes, all definitions of beauty. And it was in a year when disability was a really hot topic. And this year, what they've done is they've got a campaign called Say Something Nice. So they've teamed up with influencers and bloggers. And the idea is to tap into that messaging around online trolling and how that affects body confidence. And again, it's one of the biggest topics of this year. Women respect bravery. We admire, we have incredible empathy around vulnerability. And as executive editor for the Huffington Post, as one of the guardians of our brand, I can honestly say that when a brand is brave and wants to genuinely change the conversation around gender, it's the perfect harmony between our strong women's content and the successful messaging of your campaign. A brand that can be brave will be game-changing and therefore memorable. As a successful example, so none of us in this room don't know what This Girl Can is. And I remember the night before it launched, I met up with the chief exec, Tanya Joseph, and she was actually quite nervous about it because nothing like this had ever been done before. And we all know how successful that campaign was. And a more recent brand that's decided to be a game changer is Unilever. Unilever has pledged globally to remove male and female gender stereotyping from their marketing. And why does this make a difference? It makes a difference because it can be incredibly powerful. It has a ripple effect with other advertisers. It pulls people along with the tide. I mean, consider the fact that this week, OXO, a brand that had such an iconic ad with Linda Bellingham as like this mum that was, cooking food for her ungrateful kids. They finally decided to put a man in the kitchen. That's a really good sign of the times. And editorially, an example of this is, so we were asked at the Huffington Post to join UN Women's Media Compact. And the idea of the compact is that it encourages publishers to think about how white, how male their front pages are. And for some of you that don't know this, most national front pages tend to be about 80% men, I wish it was 80% women, 80% men versus women. And also to have consistent and regular coverage of women's issues. And I said to them, look, we already do this. We keep an eye on our front page. We have consistent coverage around women's issues. And they said, actually, you being part of this encourages other publishers to take part. It inspires them. They'll see that we're part of it. They see that the Huffington Post is part of it, and they then want to be part of that gender conversation. So I think 100% that applies to advertisers and marketing. If you have the courage to be a game changer and a leader, other people will follow. So if you take anything away from today, it's that we have to get better at reaching out to women. But more importantly, we have a duty and a responsibility to think about girls and the younger generation who are so impressionable and finding their way in the world. Yes, today's girls are way smarter than myself and their friends were at my age. They are more aware of the way that the world works. But trust me when I say some things never change. They are bright, inquisitive, funny, questioning, but they're still as vulnerable, shaped by their experiences with boys, home, school. If you can be the brand that's part of their empowerment, who can be one of the many hands that lifts them up, that doesn't chip away at their confidence, but instead instills it, then you're not just changing the game, you're changing the way that the world works. Thank you.